Welcome to Mamahood After Trauma, where we stop pretending and heal out loud. I'm Emily Cleghorn, trauma survivor, cycle breaker, and mama rebuilding from the inside out. If you're ready to break cycles, trust yourself again, and rise without shame, you're in the right place. Let's go. Before we dive in, mama, if you're a mama healing from trauma and trying to parent differently, but you're not sure what support or next step is right for you, I totally understand. And that's why I've created something to help. Take my free Find Your Next Step to Calm and Healing quiz to discover where you are in your healing journey and what your next best step looks like. You'll find the link in the show notes below. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Mamahood After Trauma podcast. I am thrilled that you have taken some time out of your busy mama schedule to tune in and listen to our conversation today. Today, we have the honor of being joined by Paula. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Emily.
Well, thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Um, um, my train derailed. That happens. Mom brain. Love it.
100% mom brain. Absolutely mom
Let's
brain.
let's dive in, shall we? And if you could share a little bit about who you are and what you do with our listeners, that would be great.
Yeah, I would be happy to. So, I am an attorney and I'm also a licensed clinical mental health therapist. But none of that really matters for why I'm talking to you guys, I don't think. I'm a mother and I wrote a book recently called Tumbleweeds, which is about basically the births and experiences that I've had with all of my children. And I think probably one of the stories that is the most relevant to you guys is my second child. So my middle son was born at 27 weeks gestation. I had acute preeclampsia with him. And so that was a pretty traumatic birth. It was terrifying. I also had some things in there that I talked about because ironically, my husband is an anesthesia nurse.
Mhm.
And so when I wound up delivering Pearson, one of the things I wrote about in my book that is hilarious but not is that I was laying in the operating room. I'd been on a magnesium sulfate drip for, the weekend prior. So I felt like crap because my blood pressure was through the roof and I had all this, magnesium sulfate is not a fun chemical if you've never been on it. It's not a good experience. In fact, it's probably the most difficult physical thing I've ever done in my life. And so I had all that pumping through my bloodstream. I'm in the process of having a C-section, like my infant is being removed from my body. I think my uterus was actually out at that point. Like it was a whole scene. And my husband's boss, who is a wonderful human being, walked past me and goes, Paula, you're doing great and you're going to be just fine. And he walks off. And then my husband shows up. And I was like, was that your boss? And he goes, yeah, honey, everyone in the hospital's in here. We're all trying to take care of you. You're going to get the best care. You guys are going to be great. And I was like, I kind of started looking around and I realized that like literally I think there were 40 people in my delivery room because it was my doctor, my nurse, the anesthesia team, a NICU nurse, a NICU doctor, this whole respiratory team for the baby. There were literally like 40 people, OR techs. And I literally was like, oh God, like my whole community is in here. And I'm just laying here with, here's my business. I'm all exposed. My uterus is out. And so I just say that story to say it's funny And again, my
It's
husband
not.
was exactly right. Everyone was well-meaning. Everyone was doing what was right for me, what was right for my son. We both survived. We had a long road in the NICU, but it
Hmm.
turned out fine. But when you are the woman that is going through that, there's an element of shame or
Hmm.
embarrassment, things that I had to work through were, was this my fault? Did I cause this? There's a lot of emotional grief that's going on when you have a traumatic birth. Even if you know in your
Hmm.
brain, this is not my fault, getting that mind-heart connection is a different story. And so I think it's just important for medical professionals to ponder that to you, this is another day at the office, all right? Like
Hmm.
this is just somebody else in L&D having a baby, right?
Hmm.
But for this mother, this was the first time in my life that I had ever had a pregnancy go that wrong.
Hmm.
Um, I did not know that you could have an infant at 27 weeks gestation and have it live. I didn't know that until I had this experience and the doctor explained all that to me. So for mothers, this could be a very, very new first time experience, especially for those of us like me who like blood freaks me out. That's why I
Yeah.
went to law school, so like you really do kind of have to think about the social emotional aspect of that. You may be very well meaning, but to mom, it's like, oh God, your boss is looking at my vagina.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think, was there any indication early on that there were going to be complications?
No. So, this gets into a little bit of my first pregnancy as well. So, I had been pregnant before, and my first pregnancy was also traumatic, but it wasn't the utter disaster that my second pregnancy was. I found out during my first pregnancy that my child had a complete bilateral cleft lip and palate. And
Hmm.
so I was 16 weeks pregnant. I had found out my son had this condition. I had to have an amniocentesis during that pregnancy, which was incredibly painful. And until I had the mag drip from preeclampsia, I had said the amniocentesis was the worst physical thing I'd ever done. But then I had the mag drip. That's like old news now. But I was very emotionally upset during that pregnancy. That was my first pregnancy.
Hmm.
I was very worried that I had done something wrong. I felt guilty. I was
Hmm.
incredibly anxious. I was worried about my baby being able to eat. So I had a lot of social emotional stuff going on during that
Yeah.
pregnancy. But that pregnancy went all the way to term. Like I carried him for 39 and a half weeks. I remember going and urinating in a cup and how they make you do that at the very end. And I remember asking, the doctor would say things like, "Yeah, your urine looks good. There's no protein in it." And I would be like, "Well, why does that matter?" And they were like, "Oh, we're just checking for preeclampsia." And I would say things like, "Well, what is preeclampsia?" And the doctor would say, "Oh, you don't need to worry about that. It's not happening here and that'll just scare you and freak you out, so you don't need to worry about it." And I'd be like, "Oh, okay, cool. Something I don't have." So I had heard the word preeclampsia, but
Hmm.
I really didn't know what it was. So I get pregnant with baby number two, and baby number two and I are doing great, right? And I'm
Hmm.
paranoid, like, oh God, does he have cleft palate? So I've had this baby checked out. We've done all kinds of like high definition scans. We're at 20 weeks. He's beautiful. He's healthy. We are moving on along. Everything's fine. Somewhere around week 24 in that pregnancy, just to be blunt, I started having a lot of diarrhea.
Hmm.
And I thought I was having that because the 2-year-old, so the first baby, had had a virus. And I just thought I had caught whatever my 2-year-old had. I just thought
Hmm.
I was sick. So I didn't pay that any attention. I also noticed that I was swelling. And I was swelling a lot, but it was kind of like what happened in my first pregnancy at months 8 and 9. When like your feet really get swollen and your hands
Hmm.
begin to swell. And so I just thought, okay, I'm swelling, but I'm pregnant. Pregnant people swell. And I
Hmm.
just thought, well, my body learned how to swell during my first pregnancy, so now it's swelling during this one. Right?
Hmm.
Like I just didn't think it never occurred to me that it's swelling too soon was a
Hmm.
sign of a problem. And I also do remember having the occasional headache.
Hmm.
And I'm not a person who's had headaches. Like, I'm not, I know a lot of women suffer from that, but I never really have. And I remember thinking that was kind of weird, but I was like, well, I'm not keeping food down because I've been sick from this virus that I had from my
Hmm.
kid. So, in retrospect, now knowing what preeclampsia is, knowing what the signs and symptoms are, yes, to answer your question, there were absolutely red flags, but I did not know that they were red flags. I had no education on that. And I think that's a really important point.
Yeah.
So I have, and I'm not saying this to be arrogant, I'm just saying this as an example. I have 4 college degrees and 5 professional American licenses. Never
Hmm.
once had anyone warned me that preeclampsia was a medical condition that I could get and that could kill me. It is the number one killer of pregnant women in the United States. And I had zero education about what it was. And I feel that if I had known, I would have seen those symptoms and been like, ooh, I need to go to the doctor. But I didn't know. I was completely clueless. And, you don't really talk about having diarrhea. That's not really a
Hmm.
conversation women start with. I think if I had told someone knowledgeable all of my symptoms at a time,
Hmm.
I would have been better informed, but I just wasn't. So, what ultimately wound up happening, I was putting the 2-year-old to bed. And I knew I didn't feel good. Like I had had a headache. I had been to the bathroom. I just didn't feel well. But my plan
Hmm.
was I'm gonna put my baby to bed and then I'm going to go to bed. And
Hmm.
right after I tucked my 2-year-old in, I had been kneeling beside his bed, like tucking him in. And I got up, like I stood up, and I felt intense pain, like at the base of my brain. It felt like
Oh man.
someone was squeezing an orange, and I felt literally electrical current going through my brain. And I was like, that's not good. And so I could barely see. I went blind for a few minutes. I was seeing spots. I walked out of my child's room and like grabbed the banister of my stairs, which were right outside his bedroom. Thank God my husband, who again is an anesthesia nurse, was on the couch down below and he looked up and he was like, what's up with you? You don't look good. And I looked at him and I said, I don't feel good. And he was like, what's wrong? And I told him what was wrong. And he was like, we're going to go to the hospital. And I was like, I don't think I need to go to the hospital. Like at this point, my brain is feeling better. Like the
Hmm.
headache seems like it like came and went, right?
Hmm.
And so I was like, I think I just need to take like a Tylenol and go to bed. He was like, we're just gonna go get you checked out. And that's all he told me. He didn't tell me, I think you might be dying. He was just like, we're just gonna go get you checked out. So he called my mother. My mother came over and stays with the 2-year-old. We don't have an ambulance ride or anything, but he puts me in the car. I don't feel good during the car ride. Like I feel nauseated. I am still seeing spots, but again, the intense pain that I was experiencing is gone. He gets me to the ER. He says something that I'm not privy to the charge nurse. And the next thing I know, I'm in the ED. Like this was a quick move from like entry to back. And so I get back there. They check my blood pressure. I don't remember exactly what it is at this moment. I do think it's documented in my book, but it was like something ridiculous. Like it was like
Hmm.
190 over 100 or something like
Wow.
unsustainably
Yeah.
high.
Yeah.
And so I see the nurse and my husband making eye contact with one another, but again, I don't know what they're doing. I have no idea. They have me pee in a cup and they come back and they say, yes, she's got the highest level of protein in her urine that she could have. And I'm now feeling like everyone's having conversations about me, but no one's telling me what's going on. And so I said, I'm sorry. Can someone please tell me what's happening to me? And they said, well, the nurse at the point said, well, we think you might have preeclampsia, but we need the gynecologist to come in here. And I'm like, what's preeclampsia? And they're like, well, it's a condition where your blood pressure is too high. And I was like, well, and again, this is not registering with me at all. So then the next thing I know, they're trying to hook me up to an IV and then they're trying to hook me up to a catheter at the same time. So I've got one nurse like digging in my vein and another nurse down there. And I
Mm,
was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I was like, I'm getting really overstimulated. I can handle one of these two activities. Like, you can do both, but we got to do them one at the time. And also,
mhm.
can someone explain to me why we're doing this? Like, I don't understand it. Like, I literally had no education about what was happening to me.
This episode is sponsored by The Rising Room. Hey, Mama, did you know the Mamahood After Trauma podcast is more than just something you listen to? Every week, we have conversations about trauma healing, triggers, emotional regulation, and breaking generational cycles. But I know listening is only one part of the journey. That's why I've created the Rising Room. It's a space where you can go deeper with the podcast through reflection prompts, monthly resources, and support designed to help you take what you're learning and apply it to your own healing journey. And if you're ready for deeper support, the regulation pathway gives you a guided next step to understand your triggers, regulate your nervous system, and begin creating more peace in your mamahood. You can learn more and find out your next step through the link in the show notes. Now let's get back to our episode.
So
Mhm.
then, in full candor, Emily, I got so dang mad. I got so mad because no one was giving me any education. And that includes, bless his love of a heart, my husband.
Mhm.
In retrospect, my husband said, after everything was over, I've never been more afraid in my whole life. He was like, I was literally terrified that I was going to lose you and Pearson, and I was going to have to raise Pratley alone. And I didn't want to tell you what was really going on. I didn't want to say, I'm actually afraid you're literally dying because I didn't want that to make your blood pressure worse. Because
Mhm.
I felt like if you heard me say that, you really would freak out. And I didn't want you freaking out until we had you hooked up to medication that would get this under control.
Mhm.
And honestly, I respect that because that's exactly what would have happened. If he had looked at
Yeah.
me and said, honey, you literally are dying. Because I was. Preeclampsia turns into eclampsia. And I was in the early stages of eclampsia. That's what that lightning bolt through my brain was. I would have absolutely died if I had taken that Tylenol and gone to bed. And I
Mhm.
absolutely would have done that if I hadn't been married to a nurse who realized I was dying.
Mhm.
So, sorry, I had a little emotional moment.
That's okay.
So, I wind up in the hospital. The first gynecologist who came in to see me was the OBGYN on call that night. He was terrible. He walked in. I think he was also, I should have added to, this was all on New Year's Eve. This was literally December 31st. So I'm pretty confident the gynecologist had his party canceled.
Oh
And
man.
he came in and he looked really irritated. And I was asking 101 questions because, again, no one's told me what's happening. I don't know. And he was just like, he literally told me I was an incubator right now. And I could be in the hospital anywhere from 6 days and I could have that baby, this week, or I could be in the hospital for 3 months on bed rest. And I was like, whoa, what? I was like, first of all, I am not having this baby this week. Like, I can't. Like, do babies at 26 weeks gestation live? He did not answer that question. And then I was like, what's this 3 months bed rest thing? Because the reality is for some women, this is what happens with preeclampsia. Either A, the mag drip works and they are able to keep the baby in your body, which is what they ultimately want. And so then you get to lay in a hospital on bed rest and be monitored with a blood pressure cuff for 90 days. Or the magnesium doesn't work for a long period of time, and then you wind up giving birth as an emergency. But again, he doesn't tell me any of that. He just said the end answer. you're either going to give birth this week or you're going to be here for 90 days. And I don't know what else to tell you. And you're basically an incubator right now. I was like, get out. Like, that is not, and I'm already, and now I'm mad anyway. I'm mad at my husband because my husband's not telling me what's going on. I'd sent my husband home by this point to go take care of the 2-year-old. I'm totally uneducated about anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to leave. This is the other thing. Preeclampsia cycles. So you feel better. That's why it's so dangerous. That's the number one reason it's dangerous is because you don't realize how sick you are because your blood pressure goes up and down all day long. And
Mm-hmm.
so you don't realize my blood pressure is so high, I can literally be on my deathbed until it's too
Mm-hmm.
late. So I'm feeling better and I'm like, why am I in here on this IV? You know? So finally, somebody comes in, they start me on the magnesium sulfate drip, which again, I don't understand. They're slapping fall risk bracelets on me, and I'm like, I'm not going to fall. And they're like, oh, well, you wait. So I do what every woman does I start Googling.
Mm.
And so then I find out from Google what's happening to me, which is not
That's not
good.
ideal.
It's not ideal, especially when you're in the hospital surrounded by people who could be educating you.
Yeah.
So I find out that I'm literally dying and that what's happening to me is pretty bad. And I'm sitting here going, mentally, I don't think I can handle being in this hospital for 3 months. And
Mm-hmm.
who's going to raise my toddler? Like, is my 2-year-old going to even know who I am by the time I get out of here? And then I'm also thinking, and my gosh, what if I have this baby? What happens when you're born at 27 weeks? And I
Mm-hmm.
start Googling that, and that is not good either. So
Mm.
now I'm really upset and I'm sitting in the hospital by myself in the middle of the night and I'm just crying. And in the meantime, other women all around me are having babies. So I'm hearing infants crying because other women are getting their children are being born and they're going to the same delivery unit as me. So I'm in the hospital for 5 days. I got admitted on December 31st. I was on the mag drip all of New Year's Day and most of January 2nd. The reason for that is they gave me surfactant, which is this miracle drug that the March of Dimes research funded. And basically, what it does, mama gets a shot in the butt and it accelerates the lung development of baby. So then the mag drip is there so that if you do give birth, your baby has a much better chance of survival because their lungs are not so weak.
Mm-hmm.
And so January 3rd, I'm just kind of in the hospital. And honestly, I feel fine. Like, I'm okay. I mean, I'm kind of weak because I've been on the mag drip. I don't really feel like eating, but I'm all right. And then I wake up on the morning of January 4th and I am hallucinating. And I know I'm hallucinating. And I feel that headache again and I can't see. I open my eyes and I see spots. So I hit the call button. And I say to my nurse, hey, I feel really sick. Like I feel the way I felt when I got admitted. And she runs in there and looks at my blood pressure, and my blood pressure's 190 over 100 or something like that. It was awful. The next thing I know, a different gynecologist comes in and he's like, oh, hold on. I forgot one part of this story that's wonderful. And it was my saving grace. On that January 3rd day where I'm just laying in the hospital, I get to meet this wonderful, wonderful NICU doctor named Dr. Art Payne. I will never forget Dr. Payne as long as I live. Dr. Payne comes in and he's like, hey, I'm a neonatologist and I'm here to talk to you about, your baby. And he goes, so, you've been on the mag drip. It's either going to work or it's not. And if it doesn't, you're going to have this baby. And I was like, well, what happens if I have this baby? And he
Mm-hmm.
said, well, he's going to have a long road in the NICU, but tomorrow you're going to be 27 weeks. And he's like, 27 weekers have a long road in the NICU, but they're usually fine. He's like, 10 years from now, you might not even know that anything was ever that he was a preemie. But he's like, but if he's born, you're not going to be able to hold him right away. His skin is not going to be like your skin. He's going to have to like go to the NICU. So, like, you're not going to get to hold him for a while. And even when you first see him, it's going to be scary. He's going to be the size of a beanie baby. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
might be able to touch him with your hand, but that's going to be it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. And he was like, do you have any questions? And I said, is this my fault? What did I do?
Mm-hmm.
Because I had also been Googling that, trying to find the answer. And he said, Paula, you didn't do anything wrong. He was like, preeclampsia happens to 22-year-old marathon runners. Like, I was 35, I was about to turn 35 at the time. And he was like, I mean, you are getting into advanced maternal age, but I've seen 40-year-olds have a healthy baby with no preeclampsia. This is just the silent killer. We really don't know what causes it. We think it has something to do with the way the placenta implants into the uterus, but this is not your fault. You didn't do anything to cause this. And I have carried that in my
Mm-hmm.
soul ever since I heard him say it. And I also try to remind myself that whenever I feel that residual guilt from my first baby's cleft palate, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
do anything to cause that either. And God knows, if I had known that anything that I did would have caused either of those conditions, I wouldn't have done it. But I
Mm-hmm.
didn't do anything. Like, my pregnancies were planned, they were wanted. I did literally everything I could do to have healthy pregnancies, and I still got those answers. And so, um, anyway, I'm in there on January 4th. The new gynecologist comes in. Thank God that first dude was gone. His call shift had ended. A new doctor comes in and he looks at me and he goes, Paula, are you ready to have this baby? And I go, I guess I have to, right? He's like, yeah, you're gonna have to. He was like, you're not gonna live unless we get him out. And I was like, are we both going to live? And he was like, you both have a 95% chance of survival. I was like, all right, let's do this. So I go in, I give birth. I already told you guys about my husband's wonderful boss, and, like, the whole county's sitting there watching me give birth. I have a C-section. Um, Pearson comes out. I literally hear something that sounds like a kitten meowing. It was my baby crying, but everyone said it's a really good sign that he's making sounds. That's good. And then I didn't get to see him. My husband did take a real quick picture of him and showed it to me, but then they wheeled him off to the NICU, and then they wheeled me back up to maternal fetal medicine because I'm recovering from giving birth, and a
Mm-hmm.
traumatic birth at that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't get to see my baby for almost 12 hours. And then when I
Oh.
do get to see him, I'm asking the nurse, like, when can I see my little boy? And the nurse was like, well, we'll put you in a wheelchair and we'll wheel you down there. And so they wheel me down to the NICU, and, like, I get wheeled up to this isolette, and my little boy's just in there in, like, his little diaper with, a ram cannula and oxygen and all kinds of stuff. And I don't get to hold him. I just get to, like, put my hand on top of him and, like, look at him. And I didn't get to leave my hand there for very long because I was afraid. Um, I will tell you too, 4 days after any woman gives birth, your hormones dump.
Yeah,
And
they do.
your hormones dump and that's normal. Women who have never experienced that or have never been told that, they're like, what the heck is wrong with me? Your hormones dump 4 days after birth. 4 days after a traumatic birth, I remember just sitting in the NICU beside my baby sobbing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I didn't, there was God and everybody was in there. And I was just sitting in there sobbing. And I remember one of the respiratory therapists was so kind. She was like, can I get you something? And I was like, no, no, I just need to cry this out. And anyway, the good news is that that little boy is now 10 years old. He is in the fourth grade. If you looked at him right now, you would have absolutely no idea that he was a NICU baby at all. None. Zero. The only long-term symptom that he has had of any of this is the fact that if he has, like, seasons like spring and fall, when the
Mm-hmm.
pollen comes out, he struggles a lot with that. And he does seem to have, like, some seasonal asthma, which is probably a ramification of his lungs just being underdeveloped at birth. But other than that, he's fine. Oh, he does have diagnosable ADHD,
Mm-hmm.
but he's very smart. His IQ is really high. And so the ADHD is kind of masked, like he doesn't need medicine for it or anything. He reads on like a 10th grade level, like he's fine. And
Yeah.
so that's the one thing that I would like to make sure that I mean, I know that God knows I'm so sympathetic and empathetic to mothers who don't have that end result. And I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
wish that on my worst enemy. But for any of you who are going through what I went through, or if you've got a baby in the NICU now, I just want you to know that it can all work out. And you can, and Dr. Payne was right. 10 years after my traumatic birth, I mean, if I wasn't reliving it all, talking to you about it,
Mm-hmm.
you would never know. Like, you would never know. But the NICU does change you. Like, I'm not the same person that I was before the
Mm-hmm.
NICU, and I will never be that person again because
Mm-hmm.
I know what it means to almost die. And I also know what it means to be wheeled into a NICU and watch something that I grew and that I love very much, like my whole heart. I know what it is to get wheeled in there and watch that child struggle for their life.
Yeah. What was your healing journey like after the NICU? Because what you went through was insanely traumatic. Um, and so your healing journey wasn't just physical, it was all of it, emotional and otherwise. So what was that journey like for you?
Well, let me also say that that is not a light switch and that
No,
that
it is not.
that took a really long time. And part of the reason I think it took so long is also because we have to think about what happens after you have a NICU baby.
Mm-hmm.
So for 90 days, my baby was in the NICU.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a lot. Like I could not live in the NICU. Some mothers do, but I personally could not do that. Um, I was still working. I had a toddler. Um, I went to the NICU every single day and I stayed there for several hours. But essentially, what happened is my husband would go during the morning and I would go during the afternoon. So we would both go in there, but there were also limitations on how long we could hold the baby
Mm-hmm.
because, I mean, that impacts them negatively.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were times where I would have a nurse come in and say, honey, he's having too many bradycardias. You've got to put him up for the night. And it was like having him ripped away from me again,
Mm-hmm.
and watching your baby have a bradycardia is scary if you don't know what it is. And I had never seen anything like that before. And there's stuff beeping and going off. So the NICU itself is not when healing begins.
No.
It's one trauma after the next,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. Um, and then when my baby got to come home, he came home on a heart monitor because the bradycardias were still occurring. And that was really the only reason he was in the NICU was the bradycardia. But his neonatologist felt like he could come home. He just needed to be on a heart monitor. And to be honest with you, I was like, does he really have to come home? Like, I don't think I can handle that. And I am not a nurse. I am not a medical professional. Like, I am
Mm-hmm.
scared. And the doctor was like, no, I think you can handle this. And I was like, oh God. And like I can and I did. But when you have a baby on a heart monitor in your house and the heart monitor goes off, it sounds like a fire alarm.
Mm-hmm.
And like you will jump out of the bed and bolt if you hear that go off at 2 o'clock in the morning. And
Yeah.
again, I'm married to a nurse. So I had that advantage when my husband was home. I did have a trained medical professional in my home. I don't know what other people with no medical training, I don't know how they handle it. But we had about 6 months of heart monitor. So that first year that he was born, I took him to 58 doctor's appointments. And I think my husband took him to about 15. So, I mean, we were constantly with
On the go.
specialists and heart monitors. So healing does not happen that first year. And that is just
No,
not a realistic expectation because you are in survival mode. Like that
absolutely.
is not the
Yeah.
time to That's not the time to go on a crash diet or to decide to make a major life change. That is not the time. Like you are just
Mm-hmm.
literally in survival mode. I think I went numb and anxiety that I normally have kind of went away. And I learned at that point I can handle dang anything if I can
Yeah.
handle this. And after we got off the heart monitor, it was like every single time a doctor would say, "You're good. You don't have to come here anymore. This concern is gone." I got a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And every time he ate and gained weight, even if he puked, I mean, he puked like the exorcist for a long time. But even though he was puking like the exorcist, every time he would gain weight, I was like, okay, we're doing a little bit better. And then as he began to hit developmental milestones, yes, he was a delayed walker. Yes, he was a delayed talker. He was 3 months younger than he was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
But as he began to hit milestones, I began to relax and I began to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the healing journey was really one of like, I healed as he grew.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not ever going to be the woman that I was before I walked into the NICU. Like that's never going to happen again. I
Yeah.
mean, you're literally staring in the face of death
Mm-hmm.
in that experience, both for yourself and your child.
Mm-hmm.
I will never be the same person again, but I'm okay with who I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I have a lot more strength than I ever had before. It takes a lot more to rattle me than it ever took before. Um, and I mean, I tell Pearson all the time, every year on his birthday and every year around his like NICU graduation day, I tell him, I'm so glad you're alive. You're literally my miracle. I'm so glad you're here. And I
Wow.
think writing my book helped me heal a lot too. That book was something I had written over time. It was really just a series of journals that I had made. But then I put them all together in a book in hopes that it would help other people who have had similar experiences.
Yeah, so if you would like to grab a copy of uh, the book, I will make sure that the link is in the show notes. Paula, can you remind us the title of your book?
Yes, it is called Tumbleweeds.
Tumbleweed.
And yeah, and it's available on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, those standard places where one buys books.
Absolutely. And I will make sure the link, as I said, is in the show notes so you can grab it. Paula, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm sure it has touched so many mamas. And your authenticity and your bravery is appreciated. Um, how can our listeners connect with you further if they'd like to do so?
Yeah, so I have a website, paulayost.com, and they're more than welcome to go on there. There's an email address. I also am on Facebook and Instagram at Paula J. Yost Author, and I would love to hear from your followers and anything I can do to help someone in this type of a situation. I'm happy to do it. And again, I hope my message is one of hope and that it's helpful for people.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. Be sure to follow the podcast so new episodes land right in your feed each week. And if you're wondering what your next step toward calmer, more confident motherhood looks like, take my free Find Your Next Step to Calm and Confidence quiz found in the show notes below. Until next time, Mama, mend the past so you can mama in peace.